Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey, Lee, Carrie, and Kurt.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey.
You can find us online at JustOneMoreFix.com or on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix. If you like us, head over to Apple Podcasts or Google Play and give us a rating and a comment. In this episode, we're going to review 10 Candles. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Kier,
I'm Haley.
And I'm Jay from Gallifrey Public Radio,
a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network.
just like the one you're listening to right now.
The opinions expressed are those of each individual.
Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready, because geekiness begins in 3,
2,
1.
As you heard, we are going to review the 10 Candles, a role-playing game of tragic horror from Stephen Dewey. 10 Candles came out in
paperback.
2016, is that what you said it was?
Is it 2016 any nominee?
Okay.
So probably.
And it looks like it's copyright 2017. So 10 Candles is a digest size book, and it is black and white printing with a color cover. It's about 81 pages, so it's very short. And like I said, it is a tragic horror role-playing game.
Like your character's life in this particular thing.
It is the paper weight and quality is pretty nice. The PDF is friendly as well. It's pretty good. I've got both of them.
Okay.
The book has lots of good examples in it, and because it's, I think, as we'll get into this, it's an important thing to have examples for the style of tragic horror that this is. Mm-hmm. And
are the scenarios in the book?
Yes, there's about a dozen different apocalypse scenarios to run through, or your choice of them as you go. And actually, the game is laid out in a very friendly way because it's kind of set up in steps as you do character and game creation.
Okay.
And that's how the book is actually kind of laid out to go through it, like right straight through the book. So it makes it easier to get the game started. You know what I'm saying? Like as a
it's a quick start linear. Well, you don't want to spend hours generating characters and
Right.
getting started because that's not how this works. Right?
and the book makes the process easier because of how the book is laid out.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So there's a good workflow is what
Yes,
you're saying.
yes. There's a small player section and a small suggestion of how to run the game, kind of game master hints that are pretty good because this, as we'll get into, this is a very different standalone kind of RPG.
Does it have an index?
No, but it's only 81 pages and it's laid out pretty well. I'm not sure an index is entirely necessary.
Well, and from what I'm remembering from character generation, it's pretty compartmentalized.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's only 80 pages and there's 6 scenarios,
There's 80 pages, and at page 62 is the end of the RPG and beginning of the different modules. I guess you might call them however you want to phrase them or whatever. So I'm not entirely sure an index is necessary.
Yeah.
But I did put like a couple different bookmarks in here just to make it easier for me to access different parts of the book. But it looks like about 5 of them, so it's not terrible.
It's pretty manageable.
10 Candles is a tragic horror game in which everybody knows their character is going to die. And that's an important feature of it because as the game goes, it's more about the journey to the destination as opposed to the destination.
I mean, this is interesting because this is the second type of these games. I think this is a genre now. It's the You're Doomed genre because Bluebeard's Bride's the same thing. It's you're doomed genre.
Tragic horror.
You're doomed. Yeah. I don't know. It's you know from the outset that that your character's not gonna make it.
Right. I suppose it's important. I think we'll read the initial premise of the game is that 10 days ago, the lights went out in the world.
Yeah.
And then 5 days ago, they came. And they is the bad guy, but it's to be defined in the scenario.
It's like The Quiet Year, except without all the happiness and the hope. Yeah.
The brief
There was
happiness.
happiness and hope in the quiet year.
Yes, it's called Spring
Well,
and
you're
Summer.
building for this you're building.
Yeah,
for
we're
the
getting
inevitable
hopeful.
battle that's coming again.
Yes, there's life in the interim.
There's at least a chance.
Busy work in the interim.
10 Candles, you kind of pick your apocalypse or the specific scenario you want your survivors to go through, and then it walks you through about 7 steps. And the first part is that you make a virtue and a vice, and they're kind of very general and broad, and then you hand one to the left and one to the right. So you're actually not making your own character's virtues and vice, which I kind of thought was interesting.
And we
because-
didn't know ahead of time.
Yeah. I intentionally, when I ran this, I kept certain aspects of this game secret from the players to see you guys experience it all for the first time, see how you would react to it. So what did you guys think about passing the virtues and vices off?
I loved it.
I kind of wish I'd have known beforehand.
No. Nope.
I'm glad I didn't. I think Kurt played Loved really well.
I think it really forced some better role playing, honestly.
I don't
it
know.
forced people out of their comfort zone, and I'm all about forcing people to do things they're uncomfortable
Be a
with.
negative Nelly, but
You should say something about that.
that's a different episode altogether.
So in our game, Kurt got loved and worried as his virtue and vice.
Well, I don't see how the two are different. But anyway, I tried to play it. I would say, and I said that, and I have oddly mixed feelings about it. And I like and we'll get into it more, I like the atmospheric sense of it. I like the character generation portion of it. But there is a part of it that goes, now after this being the second, tragic horror one, where I go, all right. I mean, in the sense that, we're really not building towards anything. I mean, we know what's going to happen. We're playing to find out what happens, but there's nothing, it's not going to go out with a bang. It's going to go out with a whimper.
Well, I think it could go out with a bang. It just depends on the style of story that you're telling. I guess it's important to mention that the game is called 10 Candles, and there are 10 candles that are lit in the middle of the table, and that is the only light that the game is played by. So one of my favorite things about this is that it does certain things at a physical level to make a very strong atmosphere of horror and hopelessness in the game.
So since you mentioned the 10 candles, can we talked about the index cards a little bit, so let's go back to system mechanic, because we kind of
we didn't talk about
diverted
system.
there a little bit. So aside from the virtue and vice, right? Everybody else has some other index cards, and they consist of
a moment, which is a moment that is your character is supposed to role play towards, and everyone knows each other's moment. This is a very, if you're familiar with Fiasco, it's kind of similar to that, where everyone knows certain pieces of everyone's character, and the idea is that we steer the game through these to make the game about telling a story and cooperative storytelling as opposed to trying to survive. The moments you choose for your character is to have them have a glimmer of hope and a thing to inspire them.
So something else that I didn't realize when creating the moment is important to know is not a moment that has already happened. It is a moment that is assumed to be true and will happen during the story.
So that you're
whenever
supposed to,
your character deems that it will happen.
Right. You're supposed to, everyone at the table is supposed to be steering the game towards those moments, because you will all know the moment, each other's moments, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Those like moments of tragic, bittersweet, whatever. Right.
Did you feel like it was easy to steer the game towards those moments, or no? And
I found mine incredibly difficult, but I think it's because I wrote it thinking that it was something that could have already happened.
Oh, okay.
No, I totally wrote mine that could happen to anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, not knowing how it worked, mine felt a little forced. I thought at time, you know what I mean? It was one of those things where you're, struggling towards catharsis or something, and it doesn't. It was hard to know, without, what I'm talking about. It just, it needed a very specific setting, obviously, and I wasn't sure that was going to happen.
No, I like the moments. I thought they were cool. I think clarification for your characters will be important here when you're actually running the game. Not for virtue and vice. You can leave them in the dark if you want in that one. For me, I thought that was okay. But for the moment, I think you should definitely let your characters know that it's going to be happening.
That may have been just something that I mistake that I didn't make as clear as I probably could have when we were doing all this, because I thought I had mentioned it, but apparently I didn't do a good enough job of it, because there was some
no, you definitely said it was going to happen. Something that is going to happen.
I just wasn't sure
vividly
how.
remember that. And I wish mine was good and it went well. I wish I'd have written it more vaguely so that it wasn't something that my character had to go to, that it was something more vague, and that I could determine like any kind of moment that was natural in gameplay would go to that. But that's just something for next time, or if I ever run it, that I will mention.
And it is something does bear mentioning. Most of the games that we review, we've played a fair amount, and this game we've only played once. But to be honest, it's not a game that I'm sure that I want to play all the time.
I do.
Like right after one another.
Yes.
No,
we'll get into that later. At the end of this when we talk about our own personal feelings about it.
Wasn't there one other?
Brink.
Yeah,
there's a
okay,
brink,
so
and the brink is the final thing that you write down. And you don't make the brink for yourself; you make it for the character next to you. And it's sort of like something that you have seen them do. That's like they're when they're at the moment of breaking. Basically, is what it is. And all of these cards have a mechanical function. So it's like I have seen you freeze. At a critical moment, or I've seen you murder, or I've seen you lie, or whatever it is.
Lee never used his in game, but for him, I wrote that I've seen him hoarding.
No, that's not true. I had a snorkel. It helps me. It helps me get to the boat.
Oh, I was
I made it to the boat.
Oh, is it is the brink in the book? Is it written as something that has to be negative? I don't recall.
It's kind of implied that because it's at that moment where you're about to break.
So it's kind of like your
over.
your hubris.
Yeah.
Or in.
Yeah. All these things are written on cards, and then when you spend them, you actually set them on fire in the bowl in the middle.
And I will say the smell adds to the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Like literally, it was in the atmosphere. It smelled like.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, that's
smell
part
like
of the mechanic,
burning.
though. So
Yeah.
when you use them, there's actually a game effect that happens.
Yeah. Mechanically, it works off of a pool of 10 d6s, and if you get a success, it's not about success or failure, it's who has narrative control. So if you roll as many d6s as there are lit candles, and if you get a success, then the players have narrative control. And if you fail and roll no sixes, then the scene ends and you blow out a candle. Now, as the game progresses, the amount of candles that are lit goes down, and the dice of those 10 go to the game master, and they roll those dice. And if they roll more sixes than the players, then the game master gets narrative control.
So the desperation increases.
And
Right.
In addition to that, any ones that are rolled come out of the pool for the rest of that round, making future attempts more difficult. And then is it only when you burn a card and then fail that you blow out a candle, or if you fail at a task at all, you
Just
blow
if
out
you
a
fail at
candle?
a task, you blow out a candle.
Okay.
So, and there are some mechanics to where allow you to re-roll the ones, which is what your virtue and vice do. And if you when you have your moment, you roll the dice, and if you succeed, you get what's called a hope die, and that die never goes away, and it succeeds on a 5 or a 6. So that's just and that's essentially all the mechanics of the game.
And candles can go out on their own, which kind of made us all want to be more still.
Yeah. It also means that you have to to keep the story moving because you use 10 tea lights. And as it turns out, I timed 14 tea lights, and the times ranged
2 or
from
3 hours, isn't it?
I think an hour and 50 minutes to 3 hours was my gap. So it's a pretty good gap. There's an element of randomness to it because I was kind of curious to see how fast do I have to push this game to know. And did it feel like it created a sense of urgency in you guys to keep the game moving?
I don't know
Yeah,
if it
kind of.
created urgency, but it did mean that it had to move along because this could have dragged out interminably. You know what I mean? But knowing that there was basically a 3-hour cap on this game, I think it was very helpful.
It definitely added some tension too, because I know being on the more recently lit side of the table, both Leah and I got yelled at different occasions for blowing out candles on our side as opposed to starter candles
Right.
on the other side of the table.
Sorry.
I believe reprimand would be the correct term.
Also, it made it harder to read the dice once there were fewer candles.
Yeah.
Well, what's neat is that there's an effect. Like I ran a murder mystery with the Library Club a couple years ago that took place. It was supposed to be a shipwreck, and as the evening wore on, I kept going because it took place at night, and I had like these little red lanterns. So I just kept turning out the lights, and it was funny to watch them huddle closer and closer. So it does. I mean, I don't care what you do. If you take the light away from
It
people,
creates a certain ambiance.
yeah, they will cluster around what's left. I mean, that's just what people do.
Okay. Do you think there's anything else to spell out about the system? Because this is a very system-like game.
Yeah.
I would like to mention one more thing.
What's that?
When you are setting up your process as a character, you get to stack the cards in a certain order. And your moment card, when that is acted out, gives you, if you succeed at it, gives you a hope die,
Right.
which you get to roll for all other rolls. So I don't know. I don't feel like I fully appreciated that at the beginning. And so I think my hope was actually underneath my virtue and my vice and right before my brink. So I didn't get the hope die till
Right.
the last
Mine
30
was
minutes
on
of the
top and I
game.
never got it.
Well, the book says to make sure that when you start that at least one character has their moment on top. And I know I've mentioned that, but I kind of like the idea of the moments being staggered out throughout. That way not everybody's trying to steer towards that right away. Does that make sense from a
It
storytelling
does
standpoint?
make sense from your perspective, but from the player wanting to have more dice perspective.
Well, but at the same
I put
time,
mine
though,
on top in hopes that I would get that extra die early, and I did not.
the one thing I will say is that with that said, the game is also about telling a story as opposed to getting more dice, if that's fair.
Right, but I think it's also fair to say that we're all expecting to lose and be murdered horribly at the end, so giving me one die closer to the beginning is not asking for too much concession on your part.
What
fair
gets
enough.
measured gets done, right? So if you tell me more dice are good,
The recording at the beginning, was it actually part of the system?
So yes, that's another piece of this is that once we have our characters made and the brink is the last thing we do, I read a piece of the story to you, which is kind of like the setting for what is happening in this session, and then the characters each record a message that is left behind, and that is part of the game, and then that gets played at the end. Did you guys, like when I played that, did that have, I mean, I realized there was a little bit of a flub in getting it to play right, but then when it finally went off, I was like, oh, this is because it's played once the last candle is blown out. And did that have an impact?
Yes.
I thought it felt very clunky and awkward when we were recording it, but it was very impactful at the end once the game was over.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Again, now when we come to our feelings about this, at the end, I'll kind of sum it up, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what effect it had.
I liked it because I felt like my character when she died was almost not quite the same person that recorded that.
Right.
And I was like, oh, if only I could have said more, or I don't know. I really liked it, and I liked hearing it back and thinking that maybe my family that survived my character's death heard it somewhere sometime.
Right.
The things we leave behind.
I guess, is there anything else to lay out about the game itself and before we go into like what it does well and all this kind of stuff?
How much do 10 tea light candles cost?
Almost.
I bought 50 of them for I think $3. So I don't
pack it in
know
because it was just
You
plain
need a
old
bowl,
index
something
cards.
big enough that the whole index card will fit in there flaming and not spill out
Safely do
elsewhere.
not use wood
And the
bowls.
extra
Preferably glass
light.
and not
And the
plastic.
cards were flaming was really like a moment of hope, except really it was our failure.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't hope at all. It
I
was
know, but it looked like hope because
the
everything
smell
was
of
brighter.
defeat.
Well, fire makes people happy.
Okay.
In small quantities.
Fires often flicker more violently right before they go out.
So
Did.
I'm going to lay out some things that very clearly this game does well and just knock them right out. The ambiance of the game is great because it's played by the light of 10 candles.
Agreed.
Burning the cards is great because there's this sense of finality in that you're actually setting these things on fire. As the light gets darker, that's great because it creates more ambiance and more dread because it's getting darker and darker. The smell of the candles going out and the smell of the cards burning has this extra piece to it of the, like burning and the world ending and all that kind of stuff. So outside of those things, what do you guys think this game does well?
It keeps it simple. I mean, it's only going to be a 3-hour game. The setup was less than 15 minutes, I want to say, maybe at the most.
Yeah, there was some explanation that happened, but I think after you, and this is with you guys having zero exposure to this game,
prep,
and I actually asked you guys, this is a a tragic horror game on a run. Just come into it and don't do any digging on this game for me.
That was hard.
I agree.
Yeah.
The system for the game drives towards the end because the dwindling dice increases the chance of failure, increasing the speed of failure.
It is
Driving
like
towards
the
end of game.
definition.
You will only have no dice.
Yeah.
It is the definition of a death spiral, I believe. This is if you had like the candles are actually in a circle, so I believe it's like the exact definition of a death spiral that escalates kind of exponentially. At the beginning, the players have more narrative control, and as the game goes on, it shifts more and more towards the game master. Do you think is there? I feel like we might be selling some of this kind of stuff short, but like I will say, in terms of an RPG, I think that this is the best RPG that sets a tone and an ambiance at a player meta level.
I wanted to go out and buy it right away after I played it. I want to run it for the groups that I don't see on a regular basis because I think that it is a great game that they'll remember even if they're never going to play that character again.
Right. I agree with that.
The other thing that I like about the game is it's played in this small setting in the dark with a fire. And it is so very just like indicative of campfire ghost stories.
Oh, yeah. I never
Right.
thought
Like
about that.
it just like instantly takes you to that place.
Well, I will say, if you're feeling good, it will make you feel bad. If you're in a good mood, it'll kill it.
I don't think so.
I disagree.
That's fine, but
I'm a big fan of tragedies just in general. I love tragic stories. I don't know why. I don't really have a good reason for it, but I find them more interesting and more compelling than a lot of feel-good rom-com, for lack of a better term, story. You know what I mean?
Can we talk about the thing you did with the sound?
Oh, yeah, there's that. So
Is that suggested in the book?
No, that was
anywhere
totally
to add
me.
that in? Okay,
No, that was totally
I'm just
me.
curious.
So the game, as we mentioned, there is no definition of what they are. So I downloaded an app that had some sound effects on it. And I went through and figured out which ones would seem like the best and worked pretty well. And I had a Bluetooth speaker set across the room
At
on
the
the opposite end of us.
Yeah.
And didn't say anything about it. It didn't make any noise. I had the light level of my cell phone turned all the way down, so it's very, very dim. The blue light filter is turned on it, so it's you almost see nothing when I turn the phone on. And there was a moment where the characters, I think, were surrounded by them, and I hit it, and it was this
chittering
bat. Actually, it was bats, is what it actually
Do
was.
you still have it on your phone?
Um,
You could just play it right now.
Or we could force them to listen to the actual play.
That's true.
True.
But
Touche.
it was a great moment where no one knew it was coming. I played it, and
It was very creepy.
well, Carrie,
I began hugging the player closest to me in real life. Sorry, Lee. I know you don't like physical contact.
I'm pretty sure Carrie didn't exactly scream, but there was definitely a startled shout. That
Oh, and
happened.
there were tears. There were definitely tears. And then there was laughter because, that's how you cope with horror. Is you laugh at it until it walks away.
well, there was some things that I was thinking about as I was reading this book about from some of our haunted house experience. And I was like, man, if I really had time to set this up, there are some amazing tricks that I have up my sleeve from prior experience that you could just totally bust out that would be amazing. But because it made this game, unlike any other role-playing game, made me think of the physicality of the space that we're playing in, because that's a big piece of the ambiance of this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, it does such a good job of manipulating that space as it is. Why not just go all in, And, yeah, well, I was unsure of the effect, and I thought it was like, well, will this be too cheesy or too hokey? And I think it's more about timing of making sure you use it at the right moment and not overuse it. But it worked really well, because I think it got played maybe 5 or 6 times throughout the game, and not every time that you would expect it to be there did I play it. I tried to work it in there the right ways to get the most effect out of it. Totally worth doing if you're going to run this game. Get a Bluetooth speaker, set it across the room, find an app that has creepy sounds, and go to town.
I was just going to say, that being said, it was well executed. It's excellently done, and it is not for me. And I'll tell you why. Knowing that, now, as I said, the second one of these I've played, and honestly, I liked the setting of Bluebeard's Bride better because it was more bizarre, it was more grotesque, it was more fantasy. This is almost more realistic.
Yeah, it is very.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so at the same time, if you're a person who, let's say, doesn't enjoy haunted houses, or you're a person who, say, doesn't like nihilism in your games, this is not the game for you. You ran it expertly. Okay, I want to make that entirely clear. The effects were good. The setup was fantastic. It was executed wonderfully, but I wouldn't play it again. Okay, and that's not saying that it's bad and not saying that it was run. You know what I mean? It's like some people just don't like chai tea lattes. You know what I mean? It's just how it is. Yeah. I'm one of those people, but it's for you if you like that sort of experience. It's not for you if you don't.
Right. Okay.
Definitely, because
I think do it to your players anyway.
Let me.
it's all in.
Okay. Let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
All that said,
Yeah.
do you think if you're unsure about the game, is it worth trying to get people to try it?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It is definitely a thing that I know that I'm the exception here. You know what I mean? Just because it's just not for me. It is definitely worth trying. Even knowing what it was about. You told me what it was about and that it was the spiral down and all sort of thing. And it's good. Okay. Don't get me wrong. It's good and it's definitely worth trying. But knowing now after having played through, I'd be like, it's not bad, but it's not something I would pick up again.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this with that one critique of knowing all of that, knowing it's not for you, but you still wanted to try it.
Oh, yeah.
Are there things out of this game that you think will change other games that you ran because of experiencing it? Do you think this will make your games that you run a little different?
I don't
like
know.
A piece?
I don't know because I have to admit that a lot of the pieces in there that were really good didn't affect me very much. One of the things that I don't want to say got to me after about hour 2.5 or so was and this might be a strength of it, the nihilism set in. Okay,
Right.
so I'm like, all right, we got 4 candles left. We're going to knock these out in the next 15, 20 minutes, and this is going to be done. Because it's on a clock, you know when it's going to be over. I mean, you can literally time it. I know that tea lights burn for about 3 hours. And so when you lit all the tea lights, when they go out, we're done. I'm like, I quite literally did the check. I'm like, oh, wow, that's going to be done. That's going to be done by midnight.
Right.
And so, you know what I mean? So it kind of puts everything on a timetable.
Right.
So it takes some of the mystery out because I know this game won't last more than 3 hours. So while at the same time, while it moves the story ahead, which is very nice because otherwise you would get mired down, in the minutia and this, that, and the other thing. It's a very specific flavor. It's the chai tea latte flavor.
Right.
And if you love that flavor, man, you're going to love this.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I totally think it could have some different flavors. Like it could be for Vikings.
Well, there's
The first sign of Ragnarok is that a giant wolf eats the sun.
And
everything is covered in darkness.
We're done.
And then there are zombies.
And then we're done. No, you know what I mean? Because you know that there's no...
Well, did you... Okay.
There's no tomorrow in this.
Did you have a response carry to that or no? Because you were kind of...
either.
When he was talking, you were like looking like you like had some realization or no?
Things that I would use from this game?
No. Like when he was talking about how the... I don't know. Just as Kurt was talking, you looked like you had something to...
I had 10 things to say, but I'm trying to be an active listener.
And not interrupt people because you know how that is.
Well, okay, so kind of stepping back a little bit from the sounds that you played, at one point that you didn't mention in the creation part, one of the characters knows something about the bad guy. And I thought that sound came from something that Lacey had said about the bad guy.
It kind of did.
But also, because of the fact that it was so dark, I thought maybe something horrific was happening in the room we were in, and I was missing it.
I didn't say anything about
No,
the bad
that was
guy.
Lee.
That was me.
Lee did.
Okay, well, I knew one person did, and I knew the
was
bad guy.
dark.
The bad guy knew something about you. Then.
Yeah.
So
Lee gave them a ravenous hunger, basically, is what it was. So that's where kind of that it worked because I had some certain assumptions that I thought I could depend on certain things from you guys because just knowing your player base and stuff. So there were certain things that I thought I could depend on. So
I've always wanted to successfully run horror, and I can't do it. I'm too lighthearted, I guess. I don't know what's wrong with my horror button. I enjoy it. And things that I'm going to take away from this game include maybe using candles in my game. And I like the smell and I like the Bluetooth speaker. I don't know that I could successfully do it right because I think if I tried it, it would be forced. But I'm going to buy this game. So maybe one day I can run I can run a horror game and actually scare someone.
right on.
That'd be great.
Let me ask you guys, outside of kind of what Kurt already went through, or not went through, what Kurt already mentioned,
What I've caught.
the strife. Is there anything else in any other ways that you think this game falls short?
I just, what's interesting is the candles are good, but they're also distracting.
I don't think.
I like the Dread Tower for the haunted house where no one survived. It didn't have the same, you know what I mean? It's I don't know. They're good, but they're also a distraction at the same time.
How do you mean a distraction?
Well, it's literally just a distraction. They're a shiny object.
But instead of being distracted by things around me, I was
like,
looking towards the center of the table at the dwindling light and knowing that my end was near. And when I looked up, I saw 4 faces looking at me. One of them was the enemy.
That wasn't me.
No,
It was James.
James.
He's the enemy.
And so all I saw was faces and light, and I wanted the light to be what was going
It
to
has
happen, but it didn't
that
happen.
sort of Goonies flashlight moment, where you put the light on your face, ghost story, like Lacey's talking about the campfire or whatever. So I understand kind of what you're saying about them being a distraction, but I also think that that's designed into the game to make it so that that's all you see.
It's part of the chai tea flavor.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Also, not to point out the obvious, but it was dark. And so it was difficult sometimes to see the dice. And also when somebody got up from the table, they may have tripped over something or ran into
Oh, right.
That's me.
Slid
something
down
or
some
Well,
stairs.
to be
down the
fair,
stairs or
and that's
something like that.
Operate this
something-
game with caution.
I think it's something to mention is that when you sit down to play this, I think it's important to make sure that everybody is settled in and ready to sit down to continue the game because that's one of the things where I felt like
Get a
we
babysitter.
sort of lost some momentum is because we had some breaks in the game where people had to use the bathroom or whatever, and there was a pause in it.
Sorry.
And
Even in the apocalypse, you got to go.
well, yeah,
You know?
but I think it sort of breaks up the emotional impact
a medical condition.
of between the scenes. You know what
I
I'm
would
saying?
have screamed when the sound went off if I hadn't just gotten back from a potty break.
Right.
And I used potty break loosely because I was not using the restroom. I was hanging out with my
Right,
children.
right.
So get a babysitter for this game. Definitely.
I would agree.
And I don't normally suggest getting a babysitter for gaming because, well, that's the cool thing about gaming is it's very family oriented. But for this game,
Get
immerse
rid of your
yourself.
kids. Yeah.
Well, it creates a certain
Horrify
amount of
yourself.
intensity and emotional investment when the game keeps progressing forward, I think. Who is this game not for?
Young children, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest, not for me. Like I said, well done. Well, and I need to make this good. I'm not saying, oh, this is crappy, nobody should buy this. No, it's very good. If you like this flavor, this is a very good. This is very well done. If you don't like it, you're not going to be happy.
I would maybe I don't know, for people that are running games for like a more sensitive crowd, and I'm saying that in a loving way, maybe put like a trigger warning on it, like, hey, this is going to put you in a dark place. And if you don't feel like going into a dark place today, maybe don't play this game with us.
It does not feel good.
No, it is not.
And I don't know that some people, when they hang out with their gaming group, want to go to the dark place, because sometimes going to the gaming group is getting out of that dark place.
Right, I hear you. The one thing it does mention in here is that it talks about the idea of going, like it's tragic horror and it is kind of dark, but that it's just as easy to end those scenes and like the candle goes out and that's the end of the scene. So there is an easy solution in terms of if things get too intense, I guess you might say, right?
But I mean, if you're already sad, you don't want to be.
Oh no, I agree with what you're saying there. But in terms of just the emotional impact of it and that kind of stuff, there is a way to work within that, I suppose. I do think if you're going to play this game, this is not a game that you just sort of spring on your players. I think that it's important to let them know that we want to play a tragic horror game, and that everybody knows that and is on board. Because if you come to the table expecting
Conan,
or superheroes or classic high fantasy stuff, this is a big departure from that. And I think it's important to make sure that all your players are on board with playing it, because one of the biggest critiques of people that have had bad experiences with this game have been, my players sat down to play it and they were going at it with that D&D mindset where we're going to win no matter what, when it's not a possibility. And that just takes away from the entire experience of it.
I mean, it was just to quote Clash of the Titans, where Amon says, "I was partial to tragedy in my youth. That was before our experience taught me that life was tragic enough without me having to write about it." That's my tolerance, I think, probably as I'm getting old, is for tragedy is getting smaller, I think. And because this does it so well, I just kind of sat back at one point and went, I don't think I need to participate in this emotionally anymore. Just because, again, it may have just been, I don't want to do it.
Right.
I love it. Yeah. I love the whole roller coaster of emotions. I love crying. I love feeling. I love laughing. I love it all. And
then again, I don't like haunted houses.
Carrie was thoroughly catharsed.
I agree. I figured.
I would have used that word, but I'm not very good at it.
Is that even a word?
Catharsis, yeah. You used it earlier today.
I didn't use catharsis.
If catharsis is a thing, then you totally
no, but it should be a word, is what I'm saying.
But can you catharse someone else?
Can you catharse yourself?
In which case, James is a catharser.
I am a catharser.
I'm uncomfortable thinking about James catharsing people.
I am.
Somehow I feel like that happens.
I'm uncomfortable with catharsing people as well, if we're being honest.
That's why there's gloves.
Oh, right. Incubating is okay. Catharsing is too far.
Oh, that's a little whoa, yeah.
So one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is whether this game is hackable. And I've seen online on some forums about people that create their own scenarios for 10 Candles. And I've seen some interesting ones where one person I saw, which was one of the more interesting ones, they mentioned doing a game like Avengers 2, where what's the one where they're coming to our real world, the people from the elves, the dark elves are coming.
Svartalfar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Them. And
from Thor to okay.
Thor. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. So they're coming and they're destroying New York and all this stuff and all that's happening, about running a superhero style game in that vein where it's all terrible, bad, and all this, and running that as a 10 Candles scenario. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Are you playing like the regular people or the heroes?
The heroes.
Oh.
Because like Thor and them are all getting beat down in that entire thing and that whole
but we all know they're going to win. If they lose, that's totally not in the vein.
Well, I was
playing. You run this as the middle scenario where they lose, and then you run a follow up.
I don't know what you would do with it, but it was just an interesting hacker version of it.
No,
I guess.
I totally think there could be hacks.
I think you could hack it as long as the final outcome that you're playing towards is not a TPK.
No, but that's what this is. It's a world party kill.
It is that because that's what the rules tell you. At the end, when the candles go out, you die. If the rules told you at the end, when the candles go out, something else happens, then something else happens.
I think it'd be a really
times you're dead and that's it. So the only thing you had to live for, and your death was preordained.
Was
Kinda like
the only
this.
thing you had to live was the here and now, essentially.
The here and now, and that your name would be remembered. And
So you could score like
Ragnarok,
remembrance points
yeah,
as the game
and
goes
like
on.
Ragnarok, what giant
sounds
wolf
too
eats the
close to
sun?
real
So it's
life.
totally
I want real
dark,
life.
just like it is in
I
10
think
Candles.
I think
And
that you
then the
could
zombies
also
rise.
run any tragedy, and I think you could do this with heroic tragedy as well, and do like a Rogue One story with this, because Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars movie, and it's a true heroic tragedy.
No
Granted,
spoilers.
all those, if you haven't seen Rogue One yet, well, absolutely the most shame upon you, and go watch it now. But that is a heroic tragedy where all the characters, the PCs will be playing, would die in the end, but the mission would still be accomplished. But that is a awesome and amazing story that I think you could still do with this.
I feel like
Yeah,
you could
that
probably
would
do
actually-
anything where everybody dies with this.
That would be
a
more
way.
fun because this is there's
think-
nothing. There's
Pirates,
nothing at the end
all
of
the
it.
pirates
Yeah.
died. They either shipwrecked and drowned, or they were hung.
I think it would be a cool way to run like the final scenes in a Ravenloft game.
Oh, that would be cool too. Yeah.
Like you can play your regular character, and then
But you're gonna lose.
after your character is dying, you play through these last 3 note cards of your character, and everyone is playing through the last 3 note cards.
You could run a terrible sci-fi government badness thing. So like, think like Firefly, what happens on Miranda. you run those events.
If you want to play Firefly Miranda, the role playing game, this is perfect. This is perfect.
But wait, stay with me. How cool would it be to run that scenario with 10 candles and then run the heroic scenario where you uncover what happened?
Yeah, you'd
in
need
this
something because
game.
I'll tell you what.
That would be
this
so
is,
neat.
Yeah, because if you're in a good mood, this will kill it. Yeah, it's very good. It's very good.
Or
at what
you'll
it
be
does.
reborn after a nice bout of catharsis.
Like a phoenix out of the ashes.
Well, I think it does mention we've focused a lot on the horror and the tragedy of it, but it is important to mention that in the book it talks about making sure that the game is about hope, and that
See,
the
it
true
can't be
tragedy
about hope
but the
because you
true
know you're gonna
tragedy
lose.
is
No, I thought maybe if I did it good
No,
enough,
you
I would
won't.
make it to that
It's-
boat, and that somebody
Can
would
I
know what
I
make
made
happened.
it
an
to the
argument here that the
I
fact
still
that
died.
it's about hope is directly related to your role playing and not the game? You have to role play like your character has hope.
I
That's the whole
tried.
point.
Yeah, I know, but it's
well, the other part of it is that it mentions hope necessarily not for your character but for the world itself, and that hope ends when the darkness consumes
the-
everyone's spirit.
It's the horror movie when you know everyone on your ship is going to die, but you're going to explode it with all the virus isolated within the ship so it doesn't make it back to the
Well,
earth.
and like
And the
Lee
same-
mentioned, the moon's still moving outside, and I thought maybe the sun was still going. Maybe my family's okay. Maybe this guy's here with us.
Or the hope in Rogue One when they know they're going to die, but their hope is that what they have done will affect the other, the outside world more, and they will have an effect on everything.
What if you did like a tragic historical fiction World War II battle with it? Then would you like it?
I don't know.
Let's storm a beach and all die.
But that's just it's,
Ten Candles, Beaches of Normandy.
that's not okay. That is not the setting for this. Of all
definitely
the
not.
settings in the world that you could do, that is the one I'm going to say is not going to fit this one. You could have chosen anything else from
What
World War. You
if-
could choose Guadalcanal.
What if you
on the
used
Japanese
it-
side? I don't want to play that game.
No.
How about?
But I think you could do
an
this like at
Edgar
the
Allan
Somme.
Poe story, like Master
That
of the
would be a
Red Death.
terribly depressing game if
Or
you played
Telltale Heart.
the
Yeah.
10 Candles Battle of the Somme.
be
Would be a
the same
terrible
point.
game, but it would totally work.
I suppose. I just
Oh man, what if you're the
historically
tunnelers at the Somme in the shaft tunneling underneath with the
Can you
candles
say
going out?
shaft again?
Oh my god, that is
Would you
terribly.
not?
No, that is terribly horrifying though. If you set that up as a game where you're the
In a
what are they,
mine.
the sappers in the
Yes.
Somme? Oh
Oh,
god, that is terrible. Because the Somme is if you like
yeah. I know. I'm going to go watch anime, and I don't watch anime.
It's
so
terrible.
I'm just going to
What
go watch
if
some anime right
you
now.
played 10 Candles in the dwarven mine being stormed by goblins.
Oh, the Mines of Moria.
Yes.
I like that.
I don't know. There's no.
Because everybody dies.
but
Yeah.
it's my
Well,
fantasy
it was
world.
fun. It was
Except
it
the
was
goblin.
interesting to go through once.
It's funny
Yeah,
that we went
but-
from the Psalm to Lord of the Rings since J.R. Tolkien fought in that battle.
True. Cool segue.
Wait. Yeah, I just connect.
Obscure reference.
well-
Nicely done.
Before we beat this one into the ground anymore, 10 Candles, it's a tragic horror game, and it does what it does very well. And I think that you would be hard pressed to find a game that does tragic horror better.
I love it.
So,
if you don't like tragic horror, don't do it.
right on.
Or do it with people you love.
This actually, when there was a post that was like, if you had to pick 10 role-playing books to make, like, that influenced you or whatever, this actually became one of mine because for the simple fact, not necessarily the tragic horror aspect of it, but manipulating the actual game space themselves to encourage a certain emotional experience. I was like, wow, it just like changed it. It did for me what Dread did for me in a different way.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So right on. So 10 Candles by Stephen Dewey. We like this game?
Yay! Except
it's a good game. It's just not for me.
Right on. It's a fair criticism. I agree. It's a very
it is a very good
specific
game.
experience. So right on.
So 4 out of 5 gamers.
10 Candles by Stephen Dewey. Check it out. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at Incompetech.com. You can support us at Patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.